Did you know that where you choose to live can be your secret weapon on your path to early retirement? We're going to talk about that. You may have noticed some changes since last time. The background was too messy before. Everything echoed in here. Solution? Hang up a moving blanket. Simple background. And it helps with the echo in my broom closet of an office. Also, new microphone. Boop, boop, boop. There it is. The old setup, I had to choose between good audio and poor video, or poor audio and good video. The new microphone, which is like all of $7, should be an improvement. We shall see. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Mike, and I retired at age 41. If you're interested in hearing about early retirement from someone who's done it, please consider giving a like and subscribe. I appreciate it, and it helps the channel out. I've touched on housing before, but today we're going to delve a little deeper. When you're starting out in life, you want to live in the cheapest place you can stand. This helps you save and invest more money earlier during your accumulation years. Let me illustrate how housing can be your secret weapon by telling you what we did wrong and how we fixed it. Okay, story time. We lived in an apartment for 3 years after we got married. It was nice enough and relatively cheap living. Those 3 years, we did some smart things like pay off car loans, but looking back, we could have saved a lot more money for a house. In fact, it was around the year 2000 when we drove around town and looked at new houses in the area. Believe it or not, a new 1,500 square foot house in 2000 in this area cost $115,000, or just under $77 a square foot. And that included the quarter acre lot it was on. To my 24-year-old self, I thought, well, all we need to do is save up $115,000 and we can move out of the apartment. Not the worst idea, but my mistake was in telling others of this plan. Boy, did I get made fun of. No one does that. Just get a mortgage like everyone else. You'll never save that much, and if you do, you'll be really old. This all came from a group of people who I affectionately refer to as the herd. Members of the herd may be nice people. The herd is likely made up partially by your family, your friends, and coworkers. The herd can generally be relied upon for one thing: bad advice. Financially speaking, these folks aren't known for original thoughts or new ideas. They've likely made a mess of their financial lives and would love for you to join them because misery loves company. Unfortunately, I let these voices steer me into building our dream home at the tender age of 26. So not only did we not save up the entire amount for the house like I had initially planned, we didn't have much for a down payment. When you go from simple apartment living to a house, there are some changes you need to be prepared for. Your housing expenses go up dramatically. Your rent used to be a doable fixed cost. Now your fixed cost is a much bigger combination of your loan, principal and interest, plus insurance and property taxes. This all gets lumped together nicely to make what is called a mortgage payment. But this isn't actually a set cost now, is it? Sure, the combined principal and interest will be the same throughout an amortized mortgage, but guess what happens to insurance? It goes up every year. Guess what happens to your property taxes? City Hall raises that every year. And we didn't even talk about maintaining the house. And do we need to mention utilities? The cost goes up exponentially to heat and cool all that space. Sure, in a new house, there's not much maintenance going on. At first, it's just a light bulb here or there. Then after a couple of years, appliances start to fail. Then after that, the HVAC and water heaters, they start acting up. Sometimes it seems like owning a house is a money pit of never-ending expenses. But you just need to be prepared for that. But that's a whole nother video. You know what else the herd said? Go out and get the biggest mortgage you can. Now, there are reasons for this. Houses do appreciate in value, usually. So you want that to be big, right? They also think very highly of getting to write off all that mortgage interest you pay to the bank every year. Unfortunately, I fell for this baloney. The house we built was 2,600 square feet. And that didn't include the 1,900 square foot unfinished basement. That's 4,500 square feet for 2 people. Was it beautiful? Yes. Was it fun hosting parties? Definitely. Was it worth it? Not entirely. After a few years in our dream home, we realized that a lot of our money was simply going into paying for the house. Instead of the $700 a month we were used to paying for rent, we now paid over $2,000 a month for housing. And that's if there was no maintenance to be done. Plus we needed to put in a lawn and landscape the place, and that can get pricey too. Then once you have a lawn, of course, you need to mow it. So don't forget about getting a lawnmower and maintaining the lawnmower. Needless to say, as beautiful as our dream home was, it was a financial nightmare. My first clue should have been this. I remember when we first moved in 2002, I had one of my favorite coworkers over to check it out. His name was Pete. Incidentally, this was the same guy that clued me into reading great books like The Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and The Richest Man in Babylon. Anyways, the entire time I was showing Pete the new place, he had a concerned look on his face. It struck me as odd because at the time, everyone else, family and friends that we showed the house to, they were really excited about it. But not Pete. Pete was not a member of the herd. He knew right away that this was a poor financial decision, and it was probably very disappointing to him that we built a house like that. So what did we do? After much hemming and hawing, we realized the inevitable. We had to sell and get something smaller and cheaper. Sometime in 2006, we listed our beautiful house for sale. It was kind of sad seeing a for sale sign in the nice yard that we planted and cared for. Once again, the herd needed to get their 2 cents in. Why are you selling? It's a beautiful house. As if those two things correlated in some way. Another one was, why are you selling? I love that house. Oh, you do? You want to buy it? I would ask. The answer was always no. What I was learning is that the herd loves it when you join them in financial misery and get louder when you decide to go against them. Yes, at age 31, we were downsizing, and it drove the herd nuts. Is something going on? Trouble at work? No. But we were learning a valuable lesson. In the accumulation stage of life, don't build your dream home, no matter what the herd tells you. It literally set us back financially 5, probably 10 years. Oh, and another thing we learned. Don't buy or build the biggest house in the neighborhood. Every other house in the area will drag your home value down. We owned the dream home for 5 years, and it never appreciated a dime. Another thing we learned was something called the housing market. I mentioned we listed our house for sale in 2006. It was on and off the market for 18 months before it finally sold. It's hard enough knowing that you overbuilt a house, but then having to keep paying for it for 18 more months was a daily dose of humble pie. What happened in that 18 months? The housing market crashed. For you young folks, look up the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. Without realizing it, we were in the midst of it. The dream house cost $270,000 to build and was sold over 5 years later in December of 2007, also for $270,000. Yeah, that's right. We made nothing on the house. In fact, when you factor in all the expenses with the house, we actually lost $50,000. Even worse, the 5 years that we could have been saving instead. Had we kept on renting, we would have saved ourselves $50,000 at least over that same time period. So when you hear the herd tell you that owning a home is always better than renting, please remember, that is a lie. Sometimes renting is the better option. So then what happened? Well, we found an older, smaller house in the city that was 1,400 square feet. Not only was this next house smaller, it was on a tiny city lot. It was so small, in fact, that I could mow it with a push mower during halftime of the Packer game. Sold the riding lawnmower, didn't need that anymore. Our total housing costs dropped dramatically, and we were finally able to begin saving and investing money. That was at age 31. This process of saving should have started at age 22 or 23, but that's not how it happened. So we got a late start. It was an expensive lesson, and one we've never forgotten. In fact, my hide was so chapped about the whole housing disaster, I started saving money with a vengeance, vowing never to be in that position again. 2008 began a 10-year saving spree that helped catapult me into early retirement in 2018. The smaller house cost us $900 a month, which wasn't that much more than our old rent, and helped our savings rate skyrocket to 60-70%. The herd, of course, thought I was nuts. They had to downsize at 31. I feel so bad for them. It was this experience that taught me to beware who you take advice from. The whole time we were building and overspending on that dream house, the herd was cheering us on like a bunch of honking geese. Yeah, there you go. Keep going. You're successful. That's just music to the ears for any 26-year-old. But it was a lie. And what they were cheering really was the fact that we were now card-carrying members of the herd. Then 5 years later, to hear the same crowd poo-poo our plan to downsize once we got our financial head on straight, it made it crystal clear whose side the herd was on. The side of financial folly. Now, you never listen to the herd, especially when it comes to housing. And just to be clear, I don't blame the herd. This was definitely 100% my mistake, my fault. Just know that the herd doesn't have your best interest in mind. Housing can be a terrible financial disaster, or it can be your secret weapon. When it comes to early retirement, I've experienced both, and hopefully it's obvious which one is the way to go. During your accumulation years, live in the cheapest place you can stand. Save those dollars. You won't regret it. So, that's it for today. Take care, and remember to do your best and forget the rest. Peace!